I wanted to go over your assignment for this week. So it's a choice assignment, and the first portion of it is what we went over today. Really, it's the video game writing. And let me just kind of walk you through this. So you can choose from 4 different things. The first 2 are going to deal with video games, which was our lesson today, which you should have watched those Ed Puzzle videos. And then the second 2 options are going to have to do with podcasts, which you're going to hear that lesson on Wednesday because we're out tomorrow for election day. So you'll get to choose between these 4. Now, you probably already know which you're going to gravitate more towards. So some of you really are into video games. Some of you may not know much about video games and might decide that, or maybe you already really love podcasts. Maybe you will decide to do a podcast review or design instead. All right, so both elements, whether you choose a video game or a podcast, involve either a review or a design. So you might want to choose a review if you already play video games and you really, really love this one particular one. So if you decide to do a review, and the same thing for a podcast, you would do that if you really loved a particular podcast that you listen to now and you choose to review it for me. So that's going to involve, you can either do like a PowerPoint, Google Slides, or some kind of audio or visual review. So if you want to make a YouTube video of your review or your podcast, that would be fine too. And I put 2 examples in that people actually used, they made like a video review of their video game. So I did put an example of that for you today on It's Learning, so you can check those out. Make sure to include the title and the rating of the video game. I don't mind if you review the MA video games if you're allowed to play those. Just don't include any elements that would be offensive to a larger audience. Same thing for the podcast. Do include the title of the podcast and episode if you end up doing a podcast. And for the video game, you're going to include your plot, your characters, and your lore. So you learned about those 3 pillars today. Those are the 3 things you're going to make sure to include as you're reviewing. So if you were making a Google slide of this, you would start maybe with a picture or a visual of the game, maybe the game cover, include your title and rating. Then in another slide, include your plot. You might need a couple of slides for plot, include a couple slides on character, and a couple of slides on lore. There's no particular length requirement on this. You just have to meet all of these requirements. Okay, same thing for the review of the podcast. So you don't need to include the 3 pillars because it doesn't apply for a podcast, but you do need to make sure that you include the basic plot as well as the basic plot of the specific episode, because sometimes you'll have different episodes within a full podcast that are different from the podcast itself. Also, make sure you include the genre. Is it true crime? Is it fiction? Is it fantasy? Make sure you include the genre. All right, if you're designing your own, what you're going to do is a PowerPoint or a Google Slides, again, or a Word document. You're making up a concept for your own game. So it's not like you're writing out the whole script or anything. Same thing for the podcast. It's just really a concept. So you would include your title, include your basic plot of the video game or the podcast, and then you're going to also include the genre for your podcast. Now, for the video game, you're going to include basic plot, character, and the lore. So go ahead and include the 3 pillars, basic things about the 3 pillars that you would include if you were to make your own podcast or video game. Okay, so all of this is due Friday before midnight. And again, you just choose one of these things. So I wanted to really quickly show you an example of something that someone did last year. So this is a podcast review that somebody did. So she took the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, and she just did a review of this. So she didn't make this up herself, but she just did a review of it. So she kind of gave a little bit of background about it, gave us the plot. She also put the episode format. And these are all drawings and images from that podcast. So she put some common places and characters, an example episode, and then a conclusion. Another one, this was an original podcast idea, and she put it as a podcast pitch. So this was just her idea of a brand new podcast. She gave the summary and the genre. So she said it was an adventure or mystery. And she gave a rough draft of a script, which I thought was cute. So you could absolutely do something like that. And she even put a mood board. So this would be something like just the things that would inspire her for this. And then a playlist on things that inspired her as well. So you can do something like that. And I think the last one is another podcast review. So this person last year, this was Jada, she did a review on this one called My Brother and Me. Some of you may listen to this and know it. But she kept hers really basic too, so I just wanted to show you, this does not have to be fancy or complicated. Basically, it's an advice show, and this is the picture of the three people who narrate. This is the basic plot. This is the basic plot of one of the episodes, and she does include a link to this particular one. Notice that she put that this particular episode does not include any like super offensive language. And that was it. So it does not have to be super complicated. It can be something a little bit more simple. Again, check out the examples of the video game review that I posted on It's Learning, and you guys let me know if you have any questions.